I guess part of me never grew out of that teenage kind of phase.
And if someone tells me,
I guess part of me never grew out of that teenage kind of phase. I'd be like, no, f you, buddy, I'll do what I want. I'd be like, no, f you, buddy, I'll do what I want. But you know what? More on that next time when I finally get round to reviewing this god-awful boring book. It's a bit dull, it's a bit dry, no spoilers, but I'll get to it soon. Right, so I'm gonna go. Take care, internet, you lovely, fantastic people. In 1991, Germar travelled to Auschwitz, where he illegally took samples from a gas chamber and from a delousing facility. Now, using Max Planck Institute stationery, he actually sent these samples off to a laboratory to get them tested. And they came back saying that they couldn't find any cyanide-based residue in the samples from the gas chamber, but they did find it in the samples from the delousing facility. And they came back saying that they couldn't find any cyanide-based residue in the samples from the gas chamber, but they did find it in the samples from the delousing facility. He presented his report to the lawyer on the understanding that it would only be used in the court case and wouldn't actually be published far and wide. Now, as it turns out, his report wasn't actually used in the court case whatsoever, but Otto thinking, this stuff is kind of interesting, I'm sure my buddies, my fellow Holocaust denialist buddies, will love to see this report. So he took it upon himself to actually send it to a group of Holocaust denialists, after making a few alterations to it, of course, and saying that it had the full backing of the Max Planck Institute. In 1993, his work was reported in the media, and he was told not to enter the Max Planck Institute again without permission. When he did so, his employment was terminated without notice. At the time of his dismissal, Germar was a PhD candidate at Stuttgart University. Now, unfortunately for him, Holocaust denialism is a crime in Germany, and German law also allows universities to withdraw their basically giving someone a degree or what have you if they've used their academic credentials to commit a crime. So they asked Germar basically not to submit his thesis. Unfortunately for him, Holocaust denialism is a crime in Germany, and German law also allows universities to withdraw their basically giving someone a degree or what have you if they've used their academic credentials to commit a crime. So they asked Germar basically not to submit his thesis, essentially making it absolutely worthless. As Holocaust denial is a criminal offence in Germany, Germar was charged with inciting racial hatred. Following a 7-month trial, Germar, who by the way at this point changed his name to Stier after getting married, was sentenced to 14 months in prison for spreading premeditated, offensive, racist propaganda. During the trial, it was discovered that Stier, Germar's now new name, wasn't the only alternative name that he would use. After the trial, Germar avoided prison by fleeing to Spain via France. Germar moved to the United Kingdom under yet another false name. There he founded Castle Hill Publishers in Hastings in 1998. And began by publishing work from a Swiss Holocaust denier. This drew the attention of the Sunday Telegraph and forced Germar once again to flee out of fear of being extradited to Germany. Germar moved to the United States, where he married a US citizen and applied for political asylum, or at least for the right not to be expelled. However, this was rejected on the basis that the application had no merits, and was a case of frivolous litigation. In 2000, Germar was contacted by another Holocaust denier, David Irwin, who wanted him to write yet another report on Auschwitz to help him in his case against Deborah Lipstadt, or I've forgotten her name now. I'll put it here. David Irwin, Deborah Lipstadt, or I've forgotten her name now. I'll put it here. In 2005, Germar was extradited to Germany, where on arrival he was arrested and ordered to serve his outstanding 14-month sentence. Whilst there, he was sentenced to a further 2 years and 6 months in prison for again inciting hatred in his book, Lectures on the Holocaust, and a promotional Holocaust denying brochure. He was released in 2009, and after spending some time here in England, in Mexico and in Panama, he successfully was able to move back to the United States, where he still is, with his wife and their 3 kids. Since his release, Germar has continued to produce revisionist material, and has appeared on several podcasts including the TDS. Recently he's been causing waves in the movement after publicly criticising Fred Leuchter. He stated that Fred's report, the Leuchter report, contained such egregious errors that it couldn't have been written from someone who is a trained engineer.
And the Leuchter report at some point states that you have to put the room under pressure, put manifold many times the amount of this gas mixture into this room in order to make it lethal. This statement in the Lucia report showed me it was written by someone who has no proper understanding of technical issues. No engineer, no technician would ever make that mistake. But it is very common among people who don't understand the concept of concentration. It's very common among non-technicians and laypersons.
Fred's former good friend and fellow Holocaust denier, Jim, also took this opportunity to distance himself from the Leuchter report.
He's living in the past. He's not updating his information.
The most damning part of this conversation between Germar and Jim came when the pair discussed the Leuchter report. Now this is delicious. This is pure drama and I'm loving this. Now, according to Germar, Fred Leuchter, prepare yourself in there, this is amazing. Fred Leuchter didn't write the Leuchter report.
And the next thing Robert François said on the phone was, "Do you know that I wrote the Leuchter report?" Came out of the blue, and I was stunned, and there was dead silence. And then I saw these two things falling in place, these stunning errors that a technician engineer would never make in the Leuchter report. And the way it is argued there that is just incorrect. And then this similar way of arguing and making mistakes that I've observed during those 10 years in Robert François's writing. And then this stunning admission on the phone, and these things fell into place. And that's where I knew, that's how I can explain how such dreadful errors can appear in a report that's allegedly written by an engineer.
Let's get back onto Germar, shall we? In 2020, Germar was arrested for open lewdness and indecent exposure when he was found naked from the waist down in a children's playground in the middle of the night. And this would never happen to him if he was a woman walking around with nothing on their nether regions. And this would never happen to him if he was a woman walking around with nothing on their nether regions. And I guess part of me never grew out of that teenage kind of phase. Germar also uploaded a video to his GoFundMe page where he explains that it was impossible for the arresting officer to see his love length because there was a playground in the way and it would stop him from looking and seeing his tallywhacker. Yeah, that's the argument that he actually gives. It's the perfect example of how revisionists or Holocaust denialists, whatever you want to call them, construct their argument. They like to get bogged down in the minutiae whilst ignoring the bigger picture. Here, Germar's entire argument focuses around the arresting officer unable to see his tallywhackle because there's a children's playground in the way. And he is purposely ignoring certain things about the case to try and convince people on GoFundMe to give him money. And at the moment, they've given him about $13,000. He's ignoring the fact that the arresting officer testified that he saw his willy. He's ignoring the fact that when he was originally arrested, he said, you know, in Germany, we like to do exercise naked. That's a terrible accent. I'm not going to do that again. He said that, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. He also doesn't mention that his initial defense was that this arresting officer just caught him changing and he just happened to have his cock in hand when he was getting changed. He ignores that. He also doesn't tell people that when he was arrested that night, he had a bottle of baby oil, oh my, in his possession. And he also doesn't tell people that in 2014, he was banned from the park for a similar incident. I guess part of me never grew out of that teenage kind of phase. And if